If you had asked anyone in our small town about me, they would have said I was the luckiest woman alive. I had a husband, Mark, who still brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning, and 2 children, Emily and Ben, who made me proud with every report card and school play. Our home was the kind people slowed down to admire. With its white picket fence and rose bushes, I tended myself. I was the president of the PTA, the go-to neighbor for a cup of sugar or a listening ear, and the woman who always remembered birthdays and anniversaries. On the surface, my life was the kind you see in magazines, the kind people envy. But if you looked a little closer, you might have noticed the cracks. Mark's smiles didn't always reach his eyes anymore, and sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch him staring out the window with a heaviness I couldn't name. Emily, once my little shadow, had started locking her bedroom door and spending hours on her phone, her laughter replaced by sighs. Ben, my sweet boy, had become withdrawn, his once bright eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite place. I told myself it was just the stress of growing up, the natural ebb and flow of family life. After all, every family has its secrets, its silent struggles. Still, I clung to the image of perfection, determined to keep up appearances. I hosted dinner parties, baked for the church bake sale, and smiled through the whispers that sometimes followed me at the grocery store. I convinced myself that if I worked hard enough, loved deeply enough, everything would be okay. But then, one afternoon, as I was leaving the library, my oldest friend Linda pulled me aside. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Be careful. Anna, not everything is as it seems." Her words sent a chill down my spine, and for the first time, I wondered if my perfect life was nothing more than a fragile illusion, one that was about to shatter. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of day that should have been unremarkable. I was in the middle of folding laundry, humming along to an old song on the radio when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened the door, expecting to see a neighbor, or maybe a package on the step. Instead, I found 2 police officers standing on my porch, their faces grave. "Mrs. Carter," the taller one asked, his tone formal. "We need to ask you a few questions." My heart skipped. I tried to laugh it off, but their expressions didn't change. They stepped inside, their presence filling the living room with a heaviness that made it hard to breathe. Mark appeared in the hallway, confusion etched on his face, and the kids hovered at the top of the stairs, wide-eyed and silent. The officers explained in clipped official voices that there had been a theft at the community center, money missing from the fundraising account, the one I'd managed for years. They said the records pointed to me. My name was on the withdrawal slips, my signature on the forms. There were even emails from my account authorizing the transfers. Felt the room tilt, the world narrowing to a tunnel of disbelief. "No," I stammered, shaking my head. "There must be some mistake." I would never, but the evidence was overwhelming. They showed me printouts, bank statements, copies of emails I didn't remember sending. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, searching for some sign that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But every detail pointed to me. My name, my handwriting, my email address. Mark's face was pale, his jaw clenched. He didn't say a word, just stared at the floor. Emily and Ben disappeared into their rooms, the sound of their doors closing echoing through the house like a verdict. I tried to reach for Mark's hand, but he pulled away, his eyes cold and distant. The officers told me I wasn't under arrest, yet, but that I shouldn't leave town. They left me with a stack of papers and a warning that the investigation was ongoing. As the door closed behind them, I felt the weight of suspicion settle over me like a shroud. The phone started ringing almost immediately. First it was the head of the PTA, her voice tight and formal, telling me I was suspended from my duties, pending the outcome of the investigation. Then it was neighbors, their voices dripping with false concern, asking if there was anything they could do. I could hear the judgment in their words, the unspoken questions. Had I really done it? Was I the kind of woman who could steal from her own community? By evening, the news had spread. I watched as friends crossed the street to avoid me, as parents pulled their children away from mine at the park. The security I'd always felt in my home, my family, my community, it was gone, replaced by a cold, gnawing fear. I sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at the evidence laid out before me. I knew I was innocent, but the world didn't care about what I knew. They cared about what they could see, and what they saw was damning. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered into the empty room. Please, someone has to believe me. Someone has to know I would never do this. But the only answer was the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of my own desperation, ringing in my ears. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of shame and disbelief. I'd always thought of myself as strong, but nothing prepares you for the way people look at you when they think you're a thief. The whispers started before I even left the house. I could see them through the curtains, neighbors pausing on their morning walks, glancing at our windows, their voices low and urgent. I tried to hold my head high, but every step outside felt like walking through a gauntlet. At home, the silence was even worse. Mark barely spoke to me, moving through the house like a ghost. When he did look at me, it was with a mixture of confusion and disappointment, as if he was searching for the woman he thought he married and finding a stranger instead. I tried to talk to him, to explain, but he just shook his head. Anna, the evidence? It's all there. I don't know what to think. His words cut deeper than any accusation from a stranger ever could. Emily and Ben, once so quick to run into my arms, now kept their distance. Emily avoided me, her eyes darting away whenever I tried to catch her gaze. I overheard her on the phone with a friend, her voice trembling as she said, "I don't know what's happening. I just wish things could go back to normal." Ben, my sweet boy, wouldn't even come down for dinner. I left his favorite meal outside his door, but the plate stayed untouched. The PTA sent an official letter, cold and impersonal, informing me that I was no longer welcome at meetings or events. My phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, most not. I never would have guessed, one read, "You always seem so trustworthy." Another simply said, "Shame on you." I deleted them all, but the words lingered, poisoning the air in my own home. The final blow came at the grocery store. I'd run out of milk and thought foolishly that I could slip in and out unnoticed. But as I reached for a carton, I heard laughter behind me. Two women from church, their voices just loud enough for me to hear. "I guess you can't trust anyone these days," one said, her eyes fixed on me. I felt my cheeks burn as I left the store, empty-handed, my dignity in tatters. I spent hours replaying every moment, every conversation, searching for a clue. Who would do this to me? Who hated me enough to destroy my life? I thought of Linda's warning, her trembling voice, the fear in her eyes. Was she trying to protect me, or was she involved somehow? The questions circled endlessly, each one heavier than the last. One night, as I sat alone in the dark, my phone buzzed with a new message. The sender was unknown, the words simple but chilling. "You're not alone. Someone close to you knows the truth. Look closer." My heart pounded as I read it again and again, hope and fear warring inside me. Was this a cruel joke? Or the first crack in the wall that had closed around me? For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a flicker of something other than despair. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. Maybe the truth was closer than I realized. If only I could find it before it was too late. I couldn't sleep that night. The mysterious message replayed in my mind, each word echoing louder than the last. Someone close to me knows the truth. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. But beneath the fear, something else began to stir, a stubborn, simmering resolve. If no one else would fight for me, I would fight for myself. The next morning, I forced myself to move through the house with purpose. I started paying closer attention to the people around me, replaying recent weeks in my mind. Mark had been distant for months, but lately, his absences had grown longer and his explanations thinner. He'd started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. I remembered the night he came home late, smelling of cologne and stress, mumbling about a work emergency. At the time, I'd believed him. Now I wasn't so sure. Then there was my sister, Rachel. She'd always been supportive, but recently she'd grown oddly evasive. She'd stopped dropping by unannounced, and when I called, she rushed off the phone, her voice tight. I remembered her reaction when the news broke, how she'd hugged me, but her eyes darted away as if she was hiding something. Was it guilt or fear? I started digging through the paperwork the police had left behind, searching for anything that didn't fit. I pored over the bank statements, the emails, the withdrawal slips. My signature was there, but something about it felt off. Too perfect, almost traced. I compared it to my real handwriting side by side, and a chill ran down my spine. Whoever had done this knew me well enough to forge my name convincingly. I thought about the emails. I never used my personal account for PTA business, yet the emails authorizing the transfers had come from it. I logged in and scrolled through my sent folder, but the messages weren't there. Someone had deleted them or sent them from somewhere else. The more I looked, the more questions I found. Why had Mark insisted on handling the bills himself lately? Why had Rachel suddenly started asking about my passwords, claiming she wanted to help me organize my life? Every memory, every odd moment took on a new, sinister light. I was still piecing things together when I noticed something strange in the stack of papers from the police. A receipt for a new laptop, purchased just days before the first suspicious transaction. The delivery address wasn't our home, but a P.O. box I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I stared at the receipt. Realization dawning. Someone had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks. I clutched the paper, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from a growing sense of determination. This was the first real crack in the story that had been built around me. I didn't know who the P.O. box belonged to, but I knew one thing for certain. I was getting closer to the truth. And whoever had set me up was about to find out just how far I was willing to go to clear my name. I waited until the house was quiet, the kind of silence that settles in after days of tension and sleepless nights. Mark was in his study, the door closed, the faint glow of his computer screen leaking out from underneath. I stood outside for a moment, steadying my breath, the receipt for the laptop clutched in my hand. I had rehearsed what I would say a dozen times, but now, with my heart pounding in my ears, the words felt heavy and uncertain. I knocked softly. "Mark, can we talk?" He didn't look up right away, just kept typing, his jaw tight. "I'm busy, Anna." I stepped inside anyway, closing the door behind me. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He finally turned, his eyes tired and wary. "What is it?" I held out the receipt. "Do you know anything about this? A laptop bought with our joint account, sent to a P.O. box I've never heard of." Right before the money went missing, he stared at the paper, his face unreadable. For a moment I thought he might deny everything, but then his shoulders slumped and he let out a long, shaky breath. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said quietly. "But I guess you would have eventually." My stomach twisted. "Find out what, Mark?" He hesitated, then gestured for me to sit. "I've been in trouble, Anna, for months. I made some bad investments. Tried to fix things before you noticed, but it just got worse. I borrowed money from people I shouldn't have. When the bills started piling up, I panicked. I thought if I could just get ahead, I could pay it all back before anyone knew." I stared at him, the pieces clicking together in my mind. "So you bought the laptop. You set up the P.O. box, but why use my name? Why make it look like I was the one who stole from the community center?" He looked away, shame coloring his cheeks. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, I needed a way to move the money without anyone tracing it back to me. I thought if I used your name, it would buy me time. I never thought they'd actually come after you. I thought I could fix it before it got out of hand. His words hit me like a physical blow. The man I'd trusted with my heart, my family, my life. He had used me as a shield for his own mistakes. I felt anger rising, hot and sharp, but beneath it was something colder. The realization that this betrayal went deeper than I'd ever imagined. "And Rachel?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Was she involved?" He hesitated, then nodded. "She helped me set up the accounts. She thought she was helping me protect you, but she didn't know the whole story. I lied to her too. I stood up, my legs unsteady. You let me take the fall, Mark. You let our children believe I was a criminal. How could you?" He reached for me, but I pulled away. "I'm sorry, Anna, I was desperate. I never wanted to hurt you, but the damage was done. The man I thought I knew was a stranger, and the life I'd built was crumbling around me." I looked at him, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "I don't care what it takes. I'm going to find out everything. I'm going to clear my name, and I'm going to make sure the truth comes out, no matter what it costs." I never imagined I could feel so utterly alone in a house that once overflowed with laughter and love. After Mark's confession, the air between us turned icy, every word and glance laced with regret and resentment. He slept in the guest room now, and the children, sensing the shift, retreated even further into themselves. The home I'd built brick by brick, memory by memory, felt like a stranger's house. Cold, silent, and haunted by betrayal. The fallout was swift and merciless. The school board called a special meeting, and without so much as a chance to defend myself, voted to remove me from my position as PTA president. My job at the library, the one place I still felt useful, was suspended pending investigation. Even the bank, where I'd been a loyal customer for years, froze our accounts. I watched helplessly as the life I'd worked so hard to build slipped through my fingers, piece by piece. But the worst blow came when Mark, desperate to protect himself, suggested that maybe the children should stay with his sister for a while. He said it was for their own good, that the press and the rumors were too much for them. I saw the fear in Emily's eyes, the confusion in Ben's. I tried to hold them, to reassure them, but they pulled away, uncertain and afraid. The day they left, I stood at the window and watched the car disappear down the street, my heart breaking in a way I didn't know was possible. For days I wandered the empty house, numb and hollow. I replayed every moment, every decision, wondering how I could have been so blind. I grieved not just for what I'd lost, but for the woman I used to be. The one who believed that love and hard work could protect her from the world's cruelty. But somewhere in that darkness, a spark of resolve began to flicker. I realized that if I didn't fight for myself, no one else would. I was done being the victim in someone else's story. I was going to write my own ending, no matter how impossible it seemed. One evening, as I was sorting through a box of old family photos, my phone buzzed with a new message. The sender was anonymous, but the words made my breath catch. "You're closer than you think." Check the blue notebook in Mark's desk. "Not everything is lost." My hands trembled as I read it again, hope and suspicion warring inside me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of purpose. Someone out there wanted me to find the truth. Someone believed in me. I wiped my tears, squared my shoulders, and headed for Mark's study, determined to follow the trail, wherever it might lead. I moved through the house with a new sense of urgency, the cryptic message echoing in my mind, the blue notebook in Mark's desk. I'd never paid much attention to his study before. He'd always kept it private, a space that was his alone. But now, every locked drawer and hidden folder felt like a potential key to my freedom. I found the notebook tucked behind a stack of old tax files, its cover worn and edges frayed. My hands shook as I opened it, half expecting to find nothing but grocery lists or work notes. Instead, I found pages filled with dates, names, and numbers, meticulously recorded transactions, some highlighted, others circled in red. There were notes in Mark's handwriting, but also entries in a different, more hurried script. I recognized it instantly. Rachel's. As I flipped through the pages, a pattern began to emerge. The withdrawals from the community center account matched up with deposits into a separate account, one I'd never seen before. There were references to meetings, phone calls, and even a few cryptic initials, LM and S. I scanned the entries, my mind racing. Who else was involved and why? I started piecing together a timeline, cross-referencing the notebook with the emails and receipts I'd collected. The more I dug, the more I realized how carefully this web had been spun. Mark and Rachel had played their parts, but there were gaps. Moments when neither of them could have made certain transactions or sent certain emails. Someone else had access. Someone who knew my routines, my passwords, my habits. I thought back to Linda's warning at the library, her anxious glances and trembling hands. She'd always been my confidant, the one person I trusted with everything. But lately she'd been distant, her calls less frequent, her visits rushed. I remembered the day she'd offered to help me organize my files, insisting on setting up new passwords and email filters. At the time, I'd been grateful for her help. Now, I wondered if I'd handed her the keys to my life without even realizing it. I dug deeper, searching through old emails and phone records. Found a series of messages from Linda's address to the community center's treasurer, all sent during times when I was supposedly out of town. The language was formal, but the phrasing was unmistakably hers. My heart pounded as I realized the truth. Linda had been the missing piece all along. The betrayal stung in a way I hadn't expected. I'd been so focused on Mark and Rachel, so consumed by their lies, that I'd missed the quiet manipulations of the person I'd trusted most. Linda had access to everything, my passwords, my schedule, even my signature. She'd been the one to plant the evidence, to nudge suspicion in my direction, all while pretending to be my friend. The helplessness I'd felt for weeks was replaced by a surge of anger and determination. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my children, my reputation, and the truth. I gathered every piece of evidence, every email, every note from the blue notebook, and laid them out on the dining room table. The story they told was clear, and for the first time I felt the power shifting back into my hands. I called Linda, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Can you come over? There's something I need to talk to you about. It's important." She hesitated but agreed to meet that evening. As I hung up the phone, I looked at the evidence spread before me. The confrontation I'd been dreading was finally here. I was no longer the victim. I was the one holding the cards. And I was ready to face the real culprit, no matter what secrets she tried to keep hidden. Linda arrived just after sunset, her silhouette framed in the doorway, familiar and yet suddenly so foreign. She wore her usual warm smile, but I could see the tension in her eyes, the way her hands fidgeted with the strap of her purse. For a moment I almost faltered. This was the woman who'd held my hand through heartbreak, who'd celebrated every milestone with me. But now I saw her through new eyes. "Anna, you sounded urgent." "Is everything all right?" she asked, stepping inside. I gestured to the dining room table, where the evidence lay in neat, damning rows. "Sit down, Linda. We need to talk." She hesitated, her gaze flickering to the papers, then back to me. "What's all this?" I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "You know exactly what this is. The emails, the bank statements, the blue notebook. I know you were the one who set me up." Her face paled, but she forced a laugh. "Anna, that's ridiculous. Why would I ever—" "Don't!" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. "I trusted you with everything. My passwords, my schedule, even my signature. You were the only one who could have orchestrated all of this without raising suspicion." She looked away, her jaw clenched. You're upset, I get it. But you're grasping at straws. I slid the blue notebook across the table. Your handwriting is all over this. You coordinated with Mark and Rachel, but you were the one pulling the strings. You sent those emails from my account. You made sure the evidence pointed to me. Linda's mask began to crack. You don't understand, Anna. I never meant for it to go this far. I needed the money. My mother's medical bills, the mortgage, I was drowning. And you had everything. The perfect family, the perfect life. I thought you'd bounce back, that no one would really believe you could do something like this. Her words stung, but I pressed on. You let me lose everything. My job, my reputation, my children. You watched me fall apart and said nothing. Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. I tried to stop it. I tried to warn you. That day at the library, I wanted you to look closer, to figure it out before it was too late. But once Mark got involved, it spiraled out of control. I leaned in, my voice low and steady. You almost got away with it. But you made one mistake. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, a security camera photo from the post office, showing Linda signing for the laptop under her own name. You were so careful, but you forgot the cameras. This is you, Linda. There's no denying it. She stared at the photo, her composure crumbling. Anna, please. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know what else to do. The room was silent except for her quiet sobs. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth was finally out. Sorrow for the friendship I'd lost forever. I'm going to the police, I said quietly. You need to confess. It's over, Linda. She nodded, defeated. I'll do it. I'll tell them everything. As she left, I felt the weight begin to lift from my shoulders. I was vindicated, my name finally cleared. But more than that, I'd reclaimed my voice, my strength, and my story. And I knew no matter what came next, I would never let anyone take that from me again. The days after Linda's confession felt surreal, as if I were waking from a long, terrible dream. The police moved quickly, and with the evidence in hand, my name was cleared. The news spread through the town just as fast as the rumors once had. But this time, the whispers were different. People stopped me on the street, their faces flushed with embarrassment and regret. Some offered awkward apologies. Others simply squeezed my hand and said, I'm so sorry, Anna. We should have known better. Mark was the first to ask for forgiveness. He stood in our kitchen, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice trembling. I failed you, he admitted. I let my own fear and shame blind me to the truth. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try to make things right. It wasn't easy and it would take time, but I saw the sincerity in his eyes. For the sake of our children, I agreed to try. Emily and Ben came home, their hugs tentative at first, then fierce and tearful. We talked for hours, sorting through the confusion and pain. I promised them that no matter what happened, I would always fight for our family and for the truth. Slowly, I rebuilt my life. The PTA welcomed me back, and the library offered me my job with a heartfelt apology. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid me now brought casseroles and flowers, small gestures of atonement. I accepted their kindness, but I never forgot the loneliness of those dark days. Through it all, I discovered a strength I never knew I had. I learned that trust is precious, and that sometimes the people closest to us can cause the deepest wounds. But I also learned that resilience is born in the fire of adversity, and that standing up for yourself, even when you stand alone, is the greatest act of courage. As I watched the sun set from my porch, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. My life would never be the same, but I was no longer afraid. I had survived the storm, and I had emerged not just whole, but stronger. And I knew deep in my heart that I would never let anyone else write my story for me again. If there's one thing I've learned from this ordeal, it's that life can change in an instant. And sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones who test you the hardest. I spent so long doubting myself, questioning my worth, and feeling utterly alone. But the truth is, we are all stronger than we think. When the world turns its back, when the walls close in, that's when we discover what we're truly made of. I want you to know that if you're facing your own storm, if you've been betrayed, misunderstood, or made to feel small, you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Don't let anyone else define who you are or what you're capable of. Stand up even if your knees are shaking. Fight for your truth even if no one else believes you at first. Because in the end, the only person who can truly write your story is you. I hope my journey reminds you that redemption is possible, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, can still prevail. If you've ever faced something similar, or if you're struggling right now, I invite you to share your story in the comments. Let's lift each other up, support one another, and remind ourselves that we are never truly alone. And above all, remember this: never let anyone write your story for you.